So the theme of today's discussion is Pragyaparamita and Tara, the visualization of wisdom and compassion in female devotional imageries from the collection of National Museum. So I would be taking few imageries from the National Museum collection. Some are there in display in the galleries of NM and some are from the reserve collection. So why we are discussing the compassion and wisdom concept through the images of Pragyaparamita and Tara, this is a big question. Because we know in Buddhism there are male deities, we recognize them as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but when we see the imageries of these goddesses, are they female Bodhisattvas or Buddhas? This remains a question. But when we discuss about the Vajrayana Buddhism, the incoming of esoteric influences in the Vajrayanas in the Buddhist faith, we get to know even female Bodhisattvas and female Buddhas existed in the Buddhist pantheon. So these two goddesses, Pragyaparamita and Tara, they gained a paramount position in the Eastern Indian dynasties in the Pala period and under the Bhaumakaras during the early medieval time, and then this whole tradition of the worshipping of female cult became so important that it even disseminated to the parts of Tibet, Nepal, and in the far-fetched lands of Southeast Asia. We see imageries of Pragyaparamita as far as in Indonesia and how important they were. So, and then first I will be taking some images of Pragyaparamita. So in the first image we see a four-armed Pragyaparamita from the 10th century. The accession number is 7186, and this while discussing this imagery, so the important thing is how do we recognize it Pragyaparamita? So we know the Pragyaparamita concept, it came to importance because of the Ashtasahasrika Pragyaparamita Sutra. This text, this Mahayana Sutra, it was codified in the 1st century CE and it developed through a course of time, and the whole compendium was developed into phases. And this sutra became very important under the Pala ages, and the Pala rulers also commissioned the remaking of these sutras. So we identify it as a Pragyaparamita image because of the presence of the manuscript. So we can see the manuscript held in one of her hands, and she is shown seated cross-legged over a double lotus pedestal. She is holding a rosary, then she is shown holding a citron fruit. The citron fruit can be replaced by a vessel, which means purity. So I was discussing this four-armed deity Pragyaparamita, and how do we identify it as a Pragyaparamita? Because of the presence of the text. So the text which actually became deified as the goddess was the Ashtasahasrika Pragyaparamita Sutra. The sutra was codified in the 1st century CE, and it underwent a lot of compilation, there were redactions done on the text by even various commentators, and this process became more intensified under the ages of Pala dynasty. So during the Pala period, the rulers were ardent followers of Vajrayana Buddhism, and also they were actually commissioning the cult of female goddesses. So Tara was one of their state deities. So this Pragyaparamita cult also gained eminence under them. And when we see the image, when we talk about the iconography, we see there is a text which is held by one of her upper hands, so which helps us to identify that this is Pragyaparamita. Apart from that, we see a citron fruit. The citron fruit is sometimes replaced with a vessel of which means the purification rites, and then there is a rosary, which again helps us to understand the idea of meditation, the importance of meditation in Buddhist ritualistic practices. So in the next imagery, when we see the Pragyaparamita image from Nepal, so we see the iconography which was developed in 10th century, it continued for a very long period, and it reached the far-fetched lands of not only to Southeast Asia but also to the immediate neighbor of Nepal and Tibet. So in this image, the iconography changes a bit. So we see the deity shown making a Dharma Chakra mudra. So why she is making a Dharma Chakra mudra? We know this, and this specific mudra is identical to Buddha. So because Pragyaparamita is also, she is spreading the religion, she is making the first sermon, and her existence is as important as the relic of Buddha itself. So because so through this image we know, like the image of the goddess became as pious and as sacerdotal like the Buddha himself. So apart from that, when we see the stylistic features they remain the same, though the Newari sculptures and the Tibetan sculptures are more ornate than the Pala sculptures. And here we see the text which is held on one of her hands, and then she is having a very beautiful ornate halo. She is seated on a double lotus pedestal, and when we see the image closely, the texture of the text, the texture of the diaphanous cloth is very precisely done, and also the double lotus pedestal. So now we go to the next slide. These two images are again from the Nepal, from 15th century and from the 17th century. So I was telling you like the importance of this specific motif, the mudra, and the concept of pragya is not only important because it is equivalent to the first sermon and the teachings of Buddha, but also pragya became identified as the female principle. So in Vajrayana Buddhism, the female principle became so important, like she played an important role in the emancipation as well. Because the concept of emptiness and non-duality was believed in the Vajrayana Buddhism. Without the amalgamation of the female principle, which is the pragya, and the male principle, which is the upay, the prajna upay, or the amalgamation of both the principles, the emancipation cannot be achieved. And then when we see the images, like the tantric images, in which the Pragyaparamita takes a more higher form of Nairatma, she will be enjoying in the bliss with her consort Heruka. So this is like the Pragyaparamita and the Tara images are from the early they started appearing from 5th century AD, though we do not have any images from the 5th century, but then Farsian talks about the existence of these imageries in that period. But we are talking especially from the National Museum collection, which shows images from the Pala period and onwards. So in the next slide, I was talking about Pragyaparamita, but then the concept, the existence of male deities is also important to understand this interaction between the male and the female pantheon, and how the female pantheon extended from a marginalized state to a more important position. So we know, like in early Mahayana texts, the wisdom concept is mainly associated with Manjusri. Manjusri plays a very important role in propagating the idea of gender transformation, like how the gender transformation is very important if you want to attain female Buddhahood. Buddhahood was not meant for the female deities or the femalehood, because the female body was considered delusionary. It was filled with lust, it was filled with desire. But with the incoming of esoteric influences, this concept changed, and the female deity was also allowed to gain attainment without undergoing the process of gender transformation. And here this image is very pertinent, in which the Manjusri is in the center and he is attended by two forms of Pragyaparamita. If we see it from a level of hierarchy, then Manjusri still remains at an upper position than the female deities. So we can understand the underlying paradox which existed even after the upcoming of the Vajrayana influences, the tension between the gender, the tension between female sexuality and the gender between the paradox between the female bodhisattvahood remained there, because of which Manjusri is seated on a higher pedestal, and the two goddesses are seated in a little lower pedestal, but then the concept remains the same. So Manjushri holds a sword. The sword is meant to cut off the delusions of ignorance, the delusions of the mental fetters. And similarly, his counterpart, Pragya Paramita, helps him to overcome these delusions, and she spreads the message through the text. So apart from that, when we see the stylistic features, they are typically Nepali, from a very late period, the ornate halo with the foliage motifs, and they help us to identify like this sculpture belonged to a later period. Then the pedestal has two simhas or the lions on the either sides. Then there is a beautiful arrangement of the drapery, then the lotus pedestals. So these are the stylistic features which help us to identify the dating of the sculpture. In the next image, now since I'm talking about the text repeatedly, I wanted to show you one example of the text in which in the upper leaf we see this is Pragya Paramita, and in the lower leaf there is Manjushri. So how do we identify Pragya Paramita? Again, she is four-armed, she is golden hued, having a golden body appearance, and she is making the Dharma Chakra Mudra, and she is holding the characteristic attribute, which is the sutra. And apart from that, when we see these manuscripts, why these manuscripts were important? Because the rulers, they considered like by making these manuscripts, like making these mnemonic devices, they were actually gaining the merits. So these manuscripts were not only meant for personal observances, but they were also meant a device for merit making. So these manuscripts were copied, they were illustrated with these deities, and then especially like scholars like Gina Kim had discussed, like how the placement of these deities are very important to understand the proliferance of the deity in various parts of India. Like there are some deities which belong to Gujarat, and then there are references of deity which shows the eminence of Pragya Paramita in Southeast Asia, and these deities are not necessarily connected to the text. They were only meant for illustrations, were meant for the decoration, and also for also for the observances. And in the lower leaf there is Manjushri. Manjushri is also making the same Dharma Chakra Mudra, and he is golden body hued, and he is wearing a tiger skin. So these are the few things, like how Tantric Buddhism was also carrying some influences of Shaivism, that I will be discussing in the next session. So now we go to the next slide. So this is again one example of the Ashtasahasrika Pragya Paramita manuscript. This is by Vajracharya Buddha Gupta, Eastern India, and this is all these texts were inscribed, and we know the dating of these texts and who were the people who were commissioning them. So in this image we see, if we go on at the top, we see there is a deity. She is green colored. She is not the golden hued Pragya Paramita, though she is making the same mudra. Now we think like she is Pragya Paramita, but she is actually Mahasri Tara. So Mahasri Tara, that is another form of Pragya, that is another form of Tara. She makes a very similar kind of mudra with Pragya Paramita, but she is different, and we will be discussing that in the later section. But now when we read this, when we see the illustration, it begins with, at the corner on the right, it begins with Buddha preaching. Buddha is preaching, and then we go to the Mahasri Tara image. So Mahasri Tara can be identified for one more thing, not only because of her green color, but also because she is accompanied by two more attendant figures. So these attendant figures are Ashokakanta Marichi and Ekajat. So these are the iconographic features by which art historians can identify the meaning of these images which are illustrated either in the manuscripts or in the sculptures. The concept of female bodhisattvahood became very pertinent with the rise of Tara. Tara derived from the word 3, which also means a north star, the pole star, helping us to find the path. She not only helps us to reach our goal, but she also helps us to reach the place, reach the emancipation, the nirvana. And apart from that, the gender concept becomes very important with the rise of Tara, because as I was telling you, like the bodhisattvahood and buddhahood were only meant for the male deities, but with the rise of Tara and Pragyaparamita, even the female deities got the idea, like they were allowed to become these the female Buddhas. And how we identify Tara, and how can we distinguish Tara from Pragyaparamita? So Pragyaparamita is can be identified through the sutra. Similarly, Tara can be identified by the Utpal. So all these attributes are also derived from the male counterparts. So Tara is not only considered as the universal compassion derived from her male counterpart Avalokiteshvara, but she is also called the universal mother of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And the same concept also applies to Pragyaparamita. So when we see this image, there is a lot of debate, like where the Tara image, firstly it emerged in Western Deccan or in Eastern India, but when we see a Nalanda inscription, a brick inscription, it talks about the earliest image of Tara is found in the Nalanda. So Nalanda was a hub of all these tantric activities, and it was the international center of Buddhist learning. So that is considered as the hub of the Tara cult as well, and therefore most of the images of Tara are found from the 7th century to 12th century in the Eastern India zone. And whereas in Deccan, in the Deccan caves, we find most of the images in the later period, which is from the 10th century onwards. So this is an early image from the 7th century. We can, when we talk about the stylistic features, the concatenation of the effulgent motifs, and then also the drapery. So this image is from the 7th century and the early 8th. So this is a early Pala period image. And also we can see there are remains of incrustations of semi-precious stones. So now we go to the next image. Again, this is an image from the first half of 8th century, 47-42. So apart from the iconography, if we see the ornamentation, the kind of jewelry she is wearing, like her earlobe is there is a annulated, like this is called an annulated earring. So it is the earring is drilled inside her earlobe. This kind of annulated earrings can be seen in the Gupta period, and they become very pertinently seen in the post-Gupta sculptures. So this is a Tara image. She can be seen wearing a ornate girdle and a knee-length garment. Her upper body is bare, and then we can see under her breast there are 3 marks. These are called the Trivali, and the halo is halfly broken. But although we can see the remains of the Utpal motif. And now we go to the next image. This is from the 9th century. Now the halo becomes like a more complete halo, a round halo with the borders becomes thin, and now so we can see the transformation, the stylistic transformation, in which the focus of the sculptor is more on the deity rather on the ornamentation. So now the image becomes more important, in which Tara is shown holding the Utpal. She is in Lalitasan, in which one of her leg is flexed, resting on the pedestal, and another is, and the knee is bent. So by these simple characteristic features, we can identify these deities, and this is from West Bengal. Now we go to the next image. So we see a variety of sculptures in stones and also in metal. So the scholars say that these metal images were meant for personal devotion, like in the monasteries. These monks were having these metal sculptures because these metal sculptures are smaller in dimension, and they were meant for personal observances. And also we will see some of the tantric images in the next session, where these metal sculptures also played a very important part as of a part of a mandala, of a huge mandala consisting of some 63 deities. They acted as the central deity. But here now, when we talk about these stone sculptures, these stone sculptures are bigger in dimension, and they were considered as playing a part in the. They were fixed on the walls of the Mahaviharas. So, as I was telling you, Nalanda, there were many other Mahaviharas like the Vikramshila, the Jagadalla, Odantapuri, and obviously Nalanda, which was constructed by the Guptas, but it underwent a lot of extension during the Pala period. And we also find the inscription by Balaputra Dev, which talks about how Indonesian rulers, the rulers from Shailendra dynasty, were also coming to the Eastern India, and then they were giving donations for the construction of temples dedicated to Tara, also dedicated to Avalokiteshvara. So we understand how Tara was so important in not only in Eastern Indian sphere, and she became important in Southeast Asia as well as in Tibet. So this is Aryatara. I have been showing you the Aryatara images, in which she is simply shown holding the Utpal, denoting her compassionate nature, and she is here standing on a double lotus pedestal. And in the next image, the 9th century, the first is from 8th century. Now we go to the 9th century image. In the 9th century image, we see a very important motif, the stupa. So why stupa is there? The stupa is not only the reliquary of, denoting the reliquary of Buddha, but stupa is also considered as a metaphorical imagery to denote nirvana. So Tara is helping her devotees to cut off the evils, and she is helping them to reach the nirvana, to reach the emancipation through her compassion. So this stupa is invariably seen in most of the Pala images, where the stupa is ornating, is kept on the side of the stele. And how we identify them as the Pala imageries, because these Pala imageries are mainly, they are made up of black stone, chlorite, or the chiseling is very different. And then most of these Pala imageries have also, they are dated. So this is the first time when we see in Indian sculptures, we find dating, where we can help, when these sculptures can help us to make a chronology of the rulers. Like we have imageries, like we find a lot of dated sculptures of Tara from Devpala period, from Mahipala period, from Suryapala period. So we know, like these sculptures, all these rulers from 9th century to 12th century, within this period, they were giving commissions to propagate the idea of Tara and the cult of Tara in Eastern India. Now we go to the next slide. So in the next slide, according to the text, according to Sadhana Mala, there are various forms of Tara which are categorized under green Tara, under blue Tara, white Tara, yellow Tara. So why they are red, blue, green? Because of the Dhyani Buddhas. So we know, like the concept of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, the 5 Tathagat, and all these deities, like all these male, female deities are related to the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, and these 5 Tathagats are acting as the spiritual father or the sire And these spiritual fathers, they have the female consorts. The female consorts are known as the pragyas, and when these male deities, they copulate, the copulation is not meant for a physical copulation, but the mental union of the female and male deity led to the expansion of the Buddhist pantheon. And this is how we relate them to Akshobhaya, to Amitabh, and to Ratnasambhav, and etc. So the Tara forms are like in sculptural forms, we find most of the Tara, they are green Taras. So the green Taras have image of Amoga Siddhi, and also in Southeast Asia we find like the Tara is having a spiritual sire of Amitabh. So sometimes the sculptures, they do not relate exactly with the sadhanas which are codified in the text, but the sculptor also used his creativity to recreate these sculptures, and this is how we identify them. So this is like the first sculpture is Khadiravani Tara, and this is from 9th to 10th century. A similar kind of sculpture is also seen in the Patna Museum, Bihar. And how we identify it as Khadiravani? Because of the presence of these two attendant deities. So we see like there is Ekjata. Ekjata is a wrathful deity holding a tiger skin aloft her head, and then there is a Ashoka Kanta Marichi. Ashoka Kant Marichi is holding a branch of a Ashoka tree. So all these deities, like the main motive of all these deities in the Buddhist pantheon was to deliberate emancipation through different means. And this is how, though they were wrathful, though they were compassionate, benevolent, the main aim was to propagate the idea of compassion and propagate the idea of emancipation. And they are helping Tara as attendants to achieve this form. In the next image, again Khadiravani. In the earlier she was standing, but now she is shown seated. Those two attendant figures, female attendant figures, are shown again. And then there is one characteristic feature of the Pala sculpture, like this pointed stele, and then the presence of the stupa. If we go back to the first image, so if we go back to the first image, we see like when Tara is shown standing, there is a throne beside her. So this kind of throne motif is very particular of the Kurkihar bronzes. When we see the Kurkihar images, we see like there is a post and lintel kind of throne, and this throne is very is particularly seen in those bronzes, which are especially in the Patna Museum, Bihar. And this is like a stone counterpart in the National Museum collection. So we go to the next slide. Now these two images are not from the Pala period, but still they are important, and they tell us how the cult of Tara was not only practiced by the Pala, but by the other ruling dynasties, the contemporary ruling dynasties. One is Gadawal and another is Pratihar. So we know about the tripartite struggle in which the Rashtrakutas, the Pratihar, and the Palas, they were fighting over Kannauj. Though they were not the good allies, they were contesting against each other, but the religious goals, somehow they were common, and then they were also practicing the same kind of artistic traditions. And this is how, when we see, like this is a Khadiravani Tara. Though there is absence of the images broken, and there is absence of the Ekajata and Ashoka Kanta Marichi, still I would like to suggest like this is Khadiravani Tara because of the presence of the Dhyani Buddha at the top of her head, and also the posture. The gesture is very much seen in the Khadiravani Tara, and we see like the Dhyani Buddha at the top. That was somewhat I was talking about, how the Dhyani Buddhas are importantly, they're connected to these Buddhist deities. And apart from that, the stylistic features like the ornamentation, like there are the lotus bud, they are very different. The rendition is very different from the Pala sculptures. Now when we go to the next image, the Pratihar image from Sarnath, so Sarnath remained a very important Buddhist center till the 12th century, and many sculptures are found from there. So in this image, it looks very similar to a Hindu image, but when we see the presence of several features, like at the bottom we see like there is a image, emaciated image. So what is this emaciated image? This is actually the Suchimukh. The Suchimukh is a very an image, a kind of devilish image which is associated with Avalokiteshvara, and he is seen asking for the ambrosia of life. So Tara with her hand like Varada Mudra, she is giving her the boons, giving him the boons, and this is how we can connect, like how there was no strict line between the iconography of Avalokiteshvara or the iconography of Tara. There was much of fluidity, like the attributes were actually they amalgamated, and then there was an interaction between either the male pantheon or the female pantheon, and then there were inter-exchange or exchange of ideas. So then since Hinduism, Brahmanical culture was also very pertinent during that period, so Brahmanical motifs also they were taken into the Buddhist sphere, and we see the Vidyadharas at the top. Tara is shown holding with her Utpal. Now we go to the next slide. So in this I have put these two images because one is Aryatara and another is Mahatari. So how do we differentiate Aryatara and Mahatari? Because of the seated posture. In the Aryatara image, she is shown seated in the Lalitasana, whereas in Mahatari she is shown cross-legged. So she is seated in a cross-legged posture holding the Utpal, and she is another manifestation of Tara. Like according to the Tibetan culture, there are 21 manifestations of Tara, and she is one of them. She is also a green form of Tara. Stylistically they are much different because this is from Nalanda, where the rendition is much more I can say naturalistic. The emphasis is more on the humane figure, like the Pala images, as Susan Huntington also says, like the sculptures were much more humanly. But when in the late Para period the ornamentation, the emphasis on ornamentation increased, then it was criticized, and also from one viewpoint, but also it shows the finesse, it shows the conceivable workmanship of that period. So now we go to the next slide. Now I was telling you about the Mahasri Tara, how Mahasri, the green Tara, she shows the similar kind of Dharma Chakra Mudra, but she is different from the Pragya Paramita. Here we can see she is doing the same mudra, but the Pragya Paramita Sutra is missing. So here we can identify, like this is not Pragya Paramita, but this is a form of Tara, and both of them, they share, both the deities, they share similar kind of attributes, but we can easily differentiate them. This is again a green form of Tara, and on the other side there is Mahasri Tara. This is from 15th century, and we see this is not Mahasri, but this is Aryatara. Here she is shown holding the Utpal, and she is holding the Utpal, and she is giving the boons. Now we go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is Vajratara, and why this sculpture is important, this is like one of the masterpieces of National Museum, and Vajratara, when we see the image of Vajratara, we can understand like how the Tara cult, which emerged in the Mahayana period, in the from the 7th century, it started transforming into a different path with the influx of the tantric rituals. Now the Tara, Vajratara, according to the sadhana number 93 of Sadhana Mala, she is a part of the mandala. In those earlier images, like the sadhana is only meant for one imagery, where the meditator is visualizing only on one image. But now in this Vajratara, she is shown as a part of mandal, in which there are four goddesses in the four cardinal direction, and there are four goddesses on the guardian gates. So the four goddesses on the cardinal directions are the Pushpatara, Dhuptara, Deeptara, Gandhatara, and then the four goddesses on the guardian gates are Vajrankushi, Vajrapashi, Vajraspoti, Vajraghanta. So, and each of these deity, they have separate kind of iconography explained in the Nishpanna Yogavali and also in the Sadhanamala. And apart from that, this is a masterpiece because of the stylistic rendition, and we see like she is four-headed and 8-armed, and each head is carrying the effigy of the Dhyani Buddha. Now we go to the next slide. This is a beautiful sculpture of Tara. I have taken this imagery, though it is headless and the arms are also missing, but to show the kind of finesse of workmanship which was achieved during the Pala period. I consider it as an image of Khadiravani Tara, because there is a very similar dated image housed in the Indian Museum, Calcutta, which is there on display, and this image is very similar to that. So I would like to say that this is from the early 11th century. She is wearing a Yajnopavit. Yajnopavit is the sacred thread, and that shows the incoming of the Brahminical influences also. And now she is, and also the idea like how she was very important as a female bodhisattva. She is wearing a diaphanous upper garment, and her lower garment is rendered with thin pleats, and she is shown wearing ornaments like the girdle, the mekhela, and the kantahar of encrusted with beads, with jewels, and it seems real. It's like this figure is heavenly, like it has a hieratic characteristic in itself. Now we go to the next slide. So I was telling you like Tara is an important, how Tara is connected with Avalokiteshvara, and the concept of compassion became important with Avalokiteshvara, but how it transferred to a female deity. It has like there are many legends like Tara. She was born from the teardrop of Avalokiteshvara, and how both of them are connected to Amitabh. And then also there are legends like there are legends written by Taranath, one of the Tibetan historian of 17th century, like how Tara was a miracle worker, how she was taking the same role as Avalokiteshvara as a savior. She was helping the people by liberating from the 10 devils, and she was helping them to achieve emancipation. So this idea, the shared kind of idea of liberation and compassion, is also seen in the sculptures. So Tara was not only shown as an independent figure, but she was still shown as a subsidiary deity or as an attendant to Avalokiteshvara. We can see Tara at one end, like she is 2-armed, and then there is a 4-armed deity called Bhrikuti. So Bhrikuti can be understood as a Buddhist counterpart of Parvati, because she holds the similar kind of attributes. She holds a vessel, she holds a tridandi, a similar thing like a trishul. She holds a rosary, and she is a mendicant. She has a mark of a stupa on her foredress. So these features help us to identify the iconography of Bhrikuti, and we find like there are many sadhanas on Avalokiteshvara, about 109 forms of Avalokiteshvara. So these sadhanas, they mention the pairing of Bhrikuti and Tara, and we see it in the Loknath images. So this is from the 9th century. Apart from that, when we see the hierarchy, the Avalokiteshvara is standing on a higher pedestal and the female deities are on a lower pedestal. So again, the paradox between the gender, the paradox between which was the undercurrents are seen prevalent even during the Vajrayana period. Now we go to another image, which is the Khasarpana Avalokiteshvara. So now Avalokiteshvara is shown with the 5 Dhyani Buddhas at the top. We can identify each of every Dhyani Buddha by the mudra, by the gesture of the hand, and then the Tara and Rikuti are present. And apart from that, at the pedestal, if you see, there is one more, again the Suchi Mukha is shown, which is doing this kind of posture, who is asking, like this image, the niggle-faced image, who is asking for the ambrosia. So I was telling you, like these features, they appear not only in the Avalokiteshvara images, but also on the in the Tara images. The Suchi Mukha is there, then the Hayagrav image is there. So by presence of this circle of these attendants, we can identify it as a Khasarpana Avalokiteshvara. Now we go to the next slide. So this is the last slide of my presentation. Again, I would like to emphasize, like this is one of the form is Jata Mukut, another is Sugati Darshan Avalokiteshvara. So the Jata Mukut is 4-armed and then Sugati Darshan is 6-armed. Each and every attribute in a sculpture is important. It is not only meant to not only shows the influences from the parallel cultures, from the parallel Brahmanical culture, but also the conception changes under Buddhism, like the concept of rosary. Like in the next presentation, I will be showing you how skull ball, how wrathful deities were emerging. So Tara, she also takes a very different form. Tara takes a different form of a Vajrayogini. Then Pragyaparamita, who is shown as a very benign goddess, she will take a form of a Nairatma within the tantric circle, and all these transformations are well codified in the tantras and in the sutras, or the Vajrayana sculptures in the National Museum collection.